next topic, which is will be a little bit theoretical. This will be has to be understood. It is the amplitude, time period, and frequency. You will understand more about sound. Now, these are things which you have to understand and remember. Amplitude, time period, and frequency of a vibration. So we know that sound is produced whenever there is vibration. We have learned that to and fro motion of an object is known as vibration. To and fro. To and fro means when the object is, like if you take a thread and put a stone here, and now I take this stone and take it here. So when I take this stone here, it will come here. Now if the stone comes here, what will happen? When I will leave it, it will go and go to here. So this stone will come here. After that, it will go back. So when any object is vibrating from one point to the other point and coming back to the same point, so it is called to and fro. Fro is from and to. So starting from one point and going to another point and coming back is called to and fro motion. So what is mentioned here is this to and fro motion, when it is slow, is called oscillation. This is called oscillatory motion when the motion is slow. Now we know the oscillatory motion is basically done by a pendulum. The number of oscillations per second is called frequency. Now we come to a definition of frequency. So there are three things we will read. The frequency. The definition is given, but you have to understand. From this diagram only, we will understand what is the meaning of this. Frequency, time period, and amplitude. Now what is it? The number of oscillations per second is called frequency. Like if we take example of this pendulum, the pendulum is going from one point and then it goes to the other point and comes back. So the number of oscillations in 1 second, if the pendulum is going from here and comes back to this point, it is vibrating one time. When it starts from point A, goes to point B and then comes back, that is called one oscillation. When it starts from A, goes to B and comes back 1, then this will be 2, then this will be 3, and then this will be 4. So 1, 2, 3 and so on. The number of oscillations completed in 1 second is called the frequency. The frequency is expressed in a unit which is called hertz, and it is Hz. Now hertz you must have heard. Where have you heard the word hertz? Type below if you have heard the word hertz. I think most of you must have heard what is hertz. A frequency of 1 hertz is 1 oscillation per second. When you say that the frequency is 1 hertz, it means the frequency of vibration is 1 in 1 second. So if an object oscillates 20 times, then it will have a frequency of how much? If an object, it's the frequency of 1 hertz mean 1 oscillation in 1 second. So what is, if an object is oscillating 20 times, what will be the frequency? Type. So hertz you must have heard in radio. When you get FM radio, then it is written that 98.3, 101.1 hertz is the unit of measuring sound. So you can recognize many familiar sounds without seeing their objects. That is the meaning of frequency. Okay. Then next thing, we read frequency, the time period, and the amplitude. So frequency we have understood. Time period is how much time it has taken. So if an object is vibrating at a frequency of 20, so it is vibrating 20 times, then the time taken is called the time period. You will recognize many sounds without seeing the object producing. How do you recognize a sound? A person who is sitting next in the next room, but you are able to understand. When a person calls you, how do you recognize that the person is the concerned person whom you are hearing? Have you ever thought which factors make them different? So now very important part, which is amplitude and frequency are two properties of any sound. When you say amplitude and frequency, they are important factors which are related to sound. So what is frequency? We did. Time period is the time taken to complete the number of oscillations. But what is amplitude? Amplitude will be like, if you take this example of the pendulum is starting from one point and it goes to the other point and comes back. So if this pendulum is here and I take the pendulum till here, the point is P. So till where will this pendulum go? Will it go till this point or less than that? If this pendulum is taken here and I take the pendulum till here, till which place it will go? It will maximum go to this point. But when I take the pendulum more, it will go to a more distance. It will go far away. Yes, right. It will go less. But when the pendulum is taken more to one side, it will go more towards the other side. So this is because when the pendulum is taken to this distance, the distance moved is less. So this is less amplitude. But when you take the pendulum back more, then it will go more. So this is more amplitude. So when the amplitude is more, it will move more to the other side. So in sound, we say that amplitude and frequency are two important properties of the sound, and the amplitude decides the loudness. It is like you are hitting any object. When you hit the object less, you will hear less sound. When you hit the object from more distance, you will hear more sound. That is the amplitude, and that is the part which is described here. In the higher next classes, you will read more about sound in formula form. In it, you are understanding only the theoretical part of sound. Then comes the next part, which is the loudness and pitch. So when is an object producing more sound, that is called the loudness. And here there is a activity described. Take a metallic tumbler and a tablespoon, strike this, and now there is a container which is shown here. You hit it, it will start vibrating. You will not be able to see it, but they have taken a thread, and at the end of the thread there is a small ball which is thermocol ball, very light. Now when this glass will vibrate, you may not be able to see, but when you hang a thread and a thermocol ball, the moment thermocol ball will touch this glass which is vibrating, the ball will be thrown out. Then it will again come back, again it will be thrown out. So you will be able to understand that the glass is actually vibrating because the thermocol ball is being pushed back. So this happens if you hit the glass less softly, the thermocol ball will be pushed less. If the glass is vibrating more, the thermocol ball will be pushed more away. So that is explained here. Suspend a small thermocol ball touching. Vibrate the tumbler by striking it. The displacement of the ball is measure of the amplitude. What does this mean? Displacement of the ball. The more far away the ball goes, the more is the amplitude and the more is the sound. So if you strike the tumbler gently, then the thermocol ball will be pushed or will be thrown less. But when you strike it more, then the thermocol ball will be pushed far away. So compare the amplitude of vibration of the tumbler in the two cases. When does the amplitude become large? So amplitude is large when the sound is large. So when the sound is large, you will hear the sound more clearly. So loudness of the sound. Now this is a part which is described here. The loudness of sound is proportional to the square of the amplitude of the vibration producing the sound. So this is meaning this is a theoretical thing. The loudness of sound is proportional to the square of the amplitude. And if I say now this is a formula, the loudness of a sound is, when you say loudness, then we see proportional. This is the sign of proportional square. The loudness of sound is proportional. This is the sign of proportional to amplitude square. Now what does it mean? If the amplitude becomes twice, now if the loudness and amplitude, suppose the amplitude is 2, it will become 2 square. If the amplitude is 1, it will be 1 square. So if the amplitude becomes double, then what will happen? Then the loudness will become 4 times. If the amplitude becomes 3, so it will be 3 square. So 3 square means it will become 9 times. That is the meaning of loudness. So loudness depends upon amplitude. The more far away the object is, if you are hitting something with a distance, that is example of a drum. If you hit the drum softly, you will hear a soft sound. If the amplitude becomes double, the loudness increases 4 times. So if the amplitude becomes 3 times, then the loudness will become 9 times. And how it is 9 times? Because it is square. And how it is square? That is the formula of loudness. So loudness is proportional to amplitude square, square of the amplitude. And it is mentioned here, the loudness is expressed in a unit called decibels, dB. Just now we read that the unit of measuring is hertz. Frequency is expressed in hertz. And now we are reading loudness is expressed in decibels. And there is example given here of sound. So if you are breathing normally, then the sound is 10 decibel. Soft whisper, soft speaking softly is 30 decibels, and you can see that the sound in a factory is 80 decibels. So when the sound increases, then we say that the amplitude has increased. And these are some examples. Traffic sound is 70, factory sound is 80. Above 80 decibel, the noise becomes painful. It becomes a problem. So the loudness of the sound depends on amplitude. We read it just now. The loudness depends on the amplitude, and it depends on the square of the amplitude. So if the loudness is increasing, it means the amplitude has been increased, which is mentioned here in this part. The loudness, you can underline this, the loudness of sound depends on the amplitude. When the amplitude of the vibration is large, the sound produced is loud. So if the amplitude is less, then the sound will be weak or less sound. But if the amplitude is more, then the sound will be loud. So that means amplitude and loudness are related to each other. When the amplitude is small, then the sound is feeble. So from the drum, we will understand that if you hit the drum softly, sound will be soft. But when you hit the drum loud, then the sound will be loud. And that is mentioned here, the frequency of sound. So compare, the frequency determines the shrillness or pitch of the sound. Now there is another important topic, that is comparing the sound of a baby with that of an adult. If you compare the sound of a small child with a grown up person, you will feel that the sounds are totally different. How are they different? There is next part, which is the frequency determines the shrillness or pitch of sound. If the frequency is higher, we say that the sound is shrill. If the frequency is higher, then the sound is shrill and has a higher pitch. This is important. Now this you have to write, that if the frequency is high, the sound is shrill. So when the frequency is high, high frequency means higher pitch. High frequency, high pitch. Low frequency, we say that the sound has low pitch. Now there is an example here. A drum vibrates with low frequency. So when the sound is having low frequency, therefore the drum produces what type of? It produces a heavy sound. And when a whistle is blown, then it produces a very shrill sound. So here we are understanding shrillness or pitch of the sound. So shrillness or pitch of the sound depends upon the pitch, and it depends upon how high is the sound. So this is the point. If the frequency is high, then the sound is shrill, and when the frequency is low, then the sound is not that. So here this part you can mark it. If the frequency is high, then the sound is shrill. Here high frequency means high pitch, and that means shrill. And this is heavy sound. So there are things here. If the frequency is lower, the sound has lower pitch, and therefore I can say it is heavy sound. Now this is a point which you have to remember, which is mentioned here in the next. A whistle has a higher pitch. A bird makes a high pitched sound, whereas a lion makes a low pitched roar. Now low pitch does not mean that the sound of the lion is slow. Low pitch means that when the lion will roar, its sound will be heavier, and when the bird will sing, it will be, that when the birds are singing or they are chirping, then the sound is very high pitch. So high pitch sound means shrill sound. So high pitch sound means high frequency means shrill sound. Shrill means here. The roar of a lion is very loud, while the sound of the bird is feeble. So when the lion roars, his sound is heavy, and when the bird, it produces a shrill sound. So every day we hear voice of children and adult. The frequency of the voice of a child is higher than an adult. It means the child has got high frequency sound, which is higher than the adult. Usually, the voice of a woman has a higher frequency than a man. So, this you can underline that all the women have high frequency sound. So, women have high frequency sound, which means shrill sound, and men have low frequency sound compared to a lion. So, is it that you are comparing a woman to a bird and man is compared to a lion? So are boys or men lion and girls are compared to a bird in the book. So it means men or the boys are lion and girls are bird. Is it like that? Yes, we can't say anything. Yes, it is like that. The sound is shrill, and we know that shrill sound means high frequency and high pitch. And the lion has got low frequency and low pitch. So this is the part which is important. Every day we hear different types of sound of children and adult. So women have a different sound. Young small children have different sound. In the coming chapter, you will read that children have got a very shrill sound or a high pitched sound, and when they reach the age of adolescence, then their sound changes, their voice changes. Voice changing means that the voice of the men or the boys becomes heavy. So till they reach the age of adolescence, their voice is different. And why is it different? We read it in this chapter that it depends on the voice box. We read it that there is this portion. It was describing the voice box, the sound, and it says that the vocal cords of here. So vocal cords are described here. So on page 161, the comparison of the vocal cords of men and women is given. This you have to understand along with the sound which is topic which is described on the last part. So you have understood. Any doubt you have, you can type below this video and revise the topic so that the frequency, amplitude and time period becomes clear. Then we will continue the last portion of the chapter in the next class. Stay connected with us, and yes, low pitch and I, yes, you can type below the video if you have any problem, and see you in the next class. Goodbye.